The Architect's Gambit, the Erasure of Master Harriott. In the heart of Brooklyn, where the streetlights flicker like dying stars, Master Tyrell Harriott ruled a kingdom of 64 squares. His classroom was not a place of leisure, it was a forge. He didn't just teach openings and endgames, he taught survival. The board is a mirror, he would say, his voice a low rumble against the city's din. If you do not know the man staring back at you, you have already lost. Know thyself. Among his brightest sparks was Imani. She saw the patterns before they formed, moving her pieces with a quiet, lethal precision. Tyrell pushed her harder than the rest, stripping away the comfort of easy wins. He knew the world outside the basement didn't play by the same rules as the wooden pieces. He was building an architect, someone who could design her own destiny in a world built to exclude her. Soon, the world noticed Imani. The cameras arrived, and the headlines sang of progress and the girl from Brooklyn. She was the new face of the game, a success story the institutions could wear like a badge. But in the glossy magazine spreads and the televised interviews, the man who had built her mind was nowhere to be found. The architect was being cropped out of his own blueprint. While the system polished Imani's image, it polished the reputations of others for far less. Anders, caught in a web of digital deception, was welcomed back with a shrug and a handshake. Lucas, whose hands had struck out in anger, was given a path of quiet probation. They were the golden boys, granted the grace of second chances and the benefit of every doubt, their mistakes treated as mere bumps in a long, bright road. Tyrell refused to stay in the shadows. He stood before the Grand Council, demanding to know why the gates were kept locked for some and left swinging for others. He spoke of the gatekeeping, the subtle erasures, and the cost of progress built on stolen labor. But the council didn't hear his words. They only heard his tone. To them, his passion was a disruption, and his truth was a quote, threat. Mr. Sterling, the council head, watched with eyes like cold glass. December 2024 arrived with a chill that bit through bone. At the Grand Fide venue, the tension finally snapped. Tyrell's protest was met not with dialogue, but with steel. The media didn't see a master defending the soul of the game. They saw a menace to be neutralized. As the flashbulbs popped, they captured the moment of his fall, framing his defiance as a crime. The sentence was social death. A lifetime ban was handed down, a permanent erasure from the world he had helped shape. While Anders and Lucas continued to move their pieces in the sun, Tyrell was cast into the outer darkness. He became a ghost in his own city, his name whispered in the clubs as a warning rather than a legend. The institution had moved its final piece. The Brooklyn Club grew quiet. The vibrant energy Tyrell had cultivated began to settle like dust. An old man, a janitor named Silas, swept the floors where champions were once forged. He looked at the empty chair at the head of the room, the one Tyrell used to occupy. The chessboard sat neglected, a silent witness to a vacancy that no one dared to fill. Imani returned to the basement one rainy afternoon. She sat at her old table, the weight of the spotlight feeling heavier than ever. She realized then that her success was being used to justify the very system that had silenced her teacher. She looked at the empty space where Tyrell used to stand, feeling the cold draft of his absence. She had reached the top, but the view was obscured by the fog of propaganda. A young boy named Leo approached her, clutching a worn chess set. He asked her for a lesson, his eyes wide with the same hunger Imani once had. She looked at the boy, then at the board, and she remembered the final lesson Tyrell had whispered before the world went dark. She reached out and moved upon, her voice steady and sharp. The first thing you must learn, she told him, is not how to win. It is to know thy purpose.
The Architect's Gambit, the Erasure of Master Harriott. In the heart of Brooklyn, where the streetlights flicker like dying stars, Master Tyrell Harriott ruled a kingdom of 64 squares. His classroom was not a place of leisure. It was a forge. He didn't just teach openings and endgames. He taught survival. The board is a mirror, he would say, his voice a low rumble against the city's din. If you do not know the man staring back at you, you have already lost. Know thyself. Among his brightest sparks was Imani. She saw the patterns before they formed, moving her pieces with a quiet, lethal precision. Tyrell pushed her harder than the rest, stripping away the comfort of easy wins. He knew the world outside the basement didn't play by the same rules as the wooden pieces. He was building an architect, someone who could design her own destiny in a world built to exclude her. Soon, the world noticed Imani. The cameras arrived, and the headlines sang of progress and the girl from Brooklyn. She was the new face of the game, a success story the institutions could wear like a badge. But in the glossy magazine spreads and the televised interviews, the man who had built her mind was nowhere to be found. The architect was being cropped out of his own blueprint. While the system polished Imani's image, it polished the reputations of others for far less. Anders, caught in a web of digital deception, was welcomed back with a shrug and a handshake. Lucas, whose hands had struck out in anger, was given a path of quiet probation. They were the golden boys, granted the grace of second chances, and the benefit of every doubt. Their mistakes treated as mere bumps in a long, bright road. Tyrell refused to stay in the shadows. He stood before the Grand Council, demanding to know why the gates were kept locked for some and left swinging for others. He spoke of the gatekeeping, the subtle erasures, and the cost of progress built on stolen labor. But the council didn't hear his words. They only heard his tone. To them, his passion was a disruption, and his truth was a threat. Mr. Sterling, the council head, watched with eyes like cold glass. December 2024 arrived with a chill that bit through bone. At the Grand Fide venue, the tension finally snapped. Tyrell's protest was met not with dialogue, but with steel. The media didn't see a master defending the soul of the game. They saw a menace to be neutralized. As the flashbulbs popped, they captured the moment of his fall, framing his defiance as a crime. The sentence was social death. A lifetime ban was handed down, a permanent erasure from the world he had helped shape. While Anders and Lucas continued to move their pieces in the sun, Tyrell was cast into the outer darkness. He became a ghost in his own city. His name whispered in the clubs as a warning rather than a legend. The institution had moved its final piece. The Brooklyn Club grew quiet. The vibrant energy Tyrell had cultivated began to settle like dust. An old man, a janitor named Silas, swept the floors where champions were once forged. He looked at the empty chair at the head of the room, the one Tyrell used to occupy. The chessboard sat neglected, a silent witness to a vacancy that no one dared to fill. Imani returned to the basement one rainy afternoon. She sat at her old table, the weight of the spotlight feeling heavier than ever. She realized then that her success was being used to justify the very system that had silenced her teacher. She looked at the empty space where Tyrell used to stand, feeling the cold draft of his absence. She had reached the top, but the view was obscured by the fog of propaganda. A young boy named Leo approached her, clutching a worn chess set. He asked her for a lesson, his eyes wide with the same hunger Imani once had. She looked at the boy, then at the board, and she remembered the final lesson Tyrell had whispered before the world went dark. She reached out and moved a pawn, her voice steady and sharp. The first thing you must learn, she told him, is not how to win. It is to know thy purpose.